Hey, this is Matt Kennedy. This is Pop Sequentialism. And to be absolutely honest, this isn't a video I ever expected to make. Um, and it troubles me greatly that I actually feel the need to speak on this topic. And pardon me, so put on my glasses. Um, I think anybody who is connected to the comic book community at large, whether it's independent or mainstream comics, is aware that just a couple of days ago, on April 1st, um, unfortunate day for many reasons, the Cartoonist Kayfabe co-host and award-winning comic creator Ed Piskor took his own life. And uh, in the process of doing so, posted a Facebook notes um, note um, speaking to his reasons, his stated reasons for this desperate act. And I want to make it clear that in no way do I judge anyone who has reached a position in their existence where they choose to make such a dire decision. And I fully believe that there are numerous situations under which I personally would condone such an action, be it extreme physical pain, terminal illness, um, loss of mental faculties, um, extreme desperation, um, exceptional dire depression. I think we are very quick to judge, not just in this community, but writ large, that I think human beings in this particular informational age of social media, that we are geared and maybe even engineered to have a fast reaction to things, and to have opinions about things that we wouldn't otherwise have opinions about. And again, I really did not expect to be making this video. And in full disclosure, I did not know Ed Piskor particularly well. He was part of a larger group of people that I know and have exhibited as an art gallery director. Um, Certainly, growing out of my days as the gallery director at La Luz de Jesus Gallery in Los Angeles. He was certainly associated with the people in the Igloo Tornado group, who put together the Henry and Glenn comic book. A lot of these people are very, very close friends with him, and my heart certainly goes out to them. And most of all, to Jim Rugg, who was not just a very good friend of Ed's, but his co-host on the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel, which is a very popular channel within this large group of discussions of comic books. And tragic as this is, and uncomfortable as it is to discuss, what motivated me beyond the point of being able to just kind of sit silent and not comment about this is mostly the posts I've seen, the podcasts, the videos here on YouTube and elsewhere of other comic book centric content creators who have, I believe, exploited this terrible occurrence to further their own bias confirmation. I've seen a lot of people use this as an opportunity to say some really awful and terribly misogynistic things. And the worst thing I think, which is where I really kind of boiled my ire, and please don't take the calmness of this delivery as anything less than absolute outrage, that there's a lot of finger pointing going on by people who routinely bully and repeat and post incongruous criticisms of other people within this community, and to a large degree about women and people of color and other minorities. And it bums me out because it seems on the surface to have been in a completely avoidable situation. I'm not going to get into the validity of any of the accusations that were leveled against Ed, but what I do want to say, in having read his note, is that the note itself troubles me. Um, and it just bums me out. Um, I think any occurrence that raises awareness for mental health issues is a good thing in general, because I don't think that we generally pay attention to these things. But I think this is not a mental health issue, it is a shame issue. And there are dramatic differences between the two. I also think that there are three stages to an apology, and the note that Ed left behind, I feel, was accusational and did not succeed in being an actual apology. And again, I have absolutely nothing but compassion for Ed's family and friends, um, many of whom are my friends as well. And I feel that many of them have not made public statements because they feel threatened in the current environment, and I understand why they feel threatened. I understand that it's really tough to make a statement about people you know because you're so in a bubble with how you know people, and that if you are unaware of how the people that you know treat other people, you have this sort of specific understanding of who they are. And even if you have pieces or clues or, indirect information that how you know them is different than how other people know them, then you have to understand that those are anecdotal instances, that your experience, and someone else's experience is their experience. And that doesn't make your experience untrue. It doesn't make their experience untrue. And my heart really, as I say, goes most out to Jim Rugg, who was Ed's co-host on the Cartoonist Kayfabe show, um, within this past week. And this is we're talking about a week of activity from allegations to a very, very tragic occurrence. And within that time frame, Jim posted on social media a statement of segregation, that he was ending his collaboration with his friend of many years, who had been his co-host for several years on their YouTube channel. And I've already seen a lot of people in this space going after Jim, and I think it's important to understand that within Ed's note, and I have no intention of reading that note. I'm sure everybody who is watching this has either come across it or has easy access to it. Um, he expresses appreciation for his friendship with his co-host, a certain amount of hurt, but I don't feel like he blamed Jim for anything. I don't think we should blame Jim for anything. And I think it's really important to understand that every friendship, we are privy to information about the people that we know that not everybody knows. And sometimes silence is solidarity. And especially in an instance, as awful, as testing, as trying as this, that we have to understand that sometimes, as I say, silence is support. Um, if your best friend publicly posts a statement of, well, we'll just say less than solidarity, then that says something to the general public. And if, after receiving that statement, you were to basically absolve them of that, that says something too. And I don't want to read anything into what we don't know. A lot of things are going to become apparent, or maybe they won't. Maybe they never will. But I think it's really important that we understand that none of the people called out in that note, ancillary to it, inferred to, owe me or you any explanation. It is painful that Ed's note was so bitter and accusatory and lacking the true elements of an apology, one of those 3 tenets being, "I am sorry, it will never happen again, and what, if anything, can I do to atone for it?" And that note had the first tenet and lacked the other 2 completely. It was sort of positioned out there as a final statement. We will never have a repercussion to it. Ed can never be, um, you know, held accountable for what was said in that note because he's gone. And it's cruel to whoever may have been victimized, to the extent that there were any victims. Because from what I understand, there was an accusation that he had communicated with a 17-year-old girl in the state of Pennsylvania where the age of consent is 16. So we're not talking about issues of illegality. We're not talking about crime. We're talking about optics. Certainly he knew this. The second accusation, as far as I can ascertain from what I've seen and from what he mentioned in his note, is that someone requested of him a introduction or a favor or some other privilege based on him knowing somebody else, and his response was to say, "Blow me." Um, as inappropriate as that may be, again, not illegal. Maybe it was in jest. Maybe the recollection of the situation from the person who stated it um, lacked nuance, or but I don't know. What I do know is that anybody who ever crossed paths with Ed, either in person at a convention or just watched his show, that that type of response, not hard to believe. Um, Also, and I think this is worth addressing because I haven't really seen this in a lot of the videos that I've seen on YouTube, is that there were many occasions where Ed called out other creators for similar activity, and added to, if not even perhaps leading, what could be called a cancel mob. And I think that that's an important perspective. I think it's an important perspective for a couple of reasons, and not the least of which is that we're talking about 7 days, really, from the first public allegations to a terrible, terrible occurrence. And, I'm not a huge fan of the expression, or I guess expression is the wrong word, but the idea of being able to dish it out but not being able to take it. I think there is a general attitude that most people have that sees a certain amount of hypocrisy if one is able to be an accuser, but when accused, to completely dissolve. And I would never say, never belittle uh, what happened to calling it spilt milk. But having known many people whose names were dragged through the mud for extended periods of time, whether deserved or not, did not resort to the same degree of desperation. And I want to make it very clear that everybody is different, that we all have a different meter for how we can process shame, pain, insults. Um, and there and therefore it's hard to criticize someone. Whether or not you've endured the worst hell known to mankind, it's unfair to use your own pain as a basis for what somebody else is capable of absorbing, of what someone else is geared for overcoming. But, and it's not inconsequential that someone who embarks on a road to be critical of someone else in occasions where judgment is not necessarily um, equivocal, that the idea of comeuppance has a certain degree of satisfaction among those who have previously been the object of such speculation. um, I said that I do not believe this to be an occasion of a mental health issue, but one of shame. And to me, shame is a gift that you give to your detractors. And the only path out of shame is earned grace. Because the only person who can give value to shame, the only person who can articulate and measure the value of that shame is you. It's all personal. A person without a conscience feels no shame. And so any element of shame involves an element of self accountability. And so to feel that self accountability and deny accountability at the same time, it puts one in a crossroads, in an undeniably terrible mental state. But that doesn't mean that that is mental illness. And I have nothing but compassion for people who are experiencing mental illness, depression, undeserved shame. Certainly anybody who is targeted, especially the young. It's unconscionable the amount of pain that can be inflicted through social media, through this video. And I do not intend to add to the pain of Ed's family or friends. As I say, I am caught by the senselessness of this because, as I say, he was accused of things that are not illegal. They're not crimes. They're embarrassing. Um, it seems like an incredibly avoidable outcome. But again, I'm I wasn't in his head. None of us were in his head. Um, and I'm not going to speculate beyond that. As I say, things will become apparent or they won't become apparent. But what has really genuinely irked me to the point of nausea is how so many people in this community have used this event as a means of furthering their own confirmation bias, of posting incredibly misogynistic things, of saying incredibly misogynistic things, of taking the most rare examples that completely are outside of the norm to victim blame, to victim shame, which is so ironic because we're talking about something that is so based in shame, in embarrassment. And that to me is just awful. And I've seen several videos in the last couple of days where people have used this as an excuse to really belittle victims and talk about how, you know, in the case of somebody making an accusation that didn't turn out to be true. I mean, if you look at the statistics of the data, nobody gains anything from calling out their abuse. What that does is that furthers the damage that that abuse causes them. It forces them to experience it on a greater level, on a more public level, while people doubt them and while people add to the shame and then add blame to a thing that happened to them that was almost inevitably not their fault. And that's sickening. And when we again, we talk about the apology, we talk if you're gonna talk about grace, grace is earned. You don't attain forgiveness by the mere act of saying you're sorry. It has to be heartfelt, and as I say, there are other guarantees, and it must be accepted. The apology must be accepted. So to say, "I'm sorry and I quit," is not just a tragedy in the aspect that the person apologizing does not allow themselves the relief of forgiveness, but they deny the victim of their cruelty or offense, lacking cruelty, of resolution. That's perhaps even crueler than the act that deserved the apology to begin with. And so I know, as we've all had friends or acquaintances who are accused of things and we're like, "Oh, I've never known them to be that way," and we don't wanna think about them in that context. And so our immediate relief is to talk to that person and get their side of the story and find out, "Hey, what's this all about?" And by denying that possibility, Ed has denied his friends a resolution. He's denied them the consolation that the person they knew isn't this other person that he was accused of being. And as I say, the worst aspect of that is that to any degree that any of the accusations of inappropriate behavior were really damaging, that the people damaged are forever robbed of resolution, of any kind of consolation, of an ability to quickly move on, of the ability to forgive. Because the ability to forgive is one of the greatest things that we have as people, as human beings. What makes us better than animals is our ability to grant grace. And it seems so goddamn unavoidable, avoidable that talking 6 days of what, tough emails, phone calls, really avoidable stuff. It's gross that a local news channel visited Ed's parents at their house, but why did they do that? they did that because they were obviously trying to get a hold of Ed, and he would not contact them. That does not excuse the incredible imposition that is, what I think is ethically absolutely awful, um, to contact someone not immediately connected to, um, an accusation of wrongdoing. Really, and as I say, not even a law-breaking instance, but an optically bad thing, a observationally immoral thing, and an immoral thing that Ed copped to, that he apologized for. Um, I'm not a supremely spiritual person. I'm not a religious person, but I would not want my last moments on this mortal coil to be enshrouded in cursing somebody else. I don't Were it that I were a religious person, I don't think that would lead me to the place that I would wanna go. I don't know if Ed was a religious person, perhaps irrelevant, but, a lot of that note really, really disturbed me, and it's troublesome to me that so many people picked up on his accusation of being bullied when it really I don't feel it rises to the level of actual bullying. I've known people who were bullied. I've seen kids who suffered tremendously from actual bullying. We're talking about kids whose brains are not fully developed. We're not talking about a 40-year-old goddamn man. And so to call 6 days of negative feedback over questionable judgment, bullying, in the same way that kids suffer bullying, in the same way they even encounter shame, I think belittles a crisis of the problems of social media. But any conversation, any event that opens a conversation where we start to pay attention to the dangers of the virtual lynch mob, I think is a worthwhile impetus or catalyst. But I feel it's disingenuous to consider this instance bullying. And I wouldn't wish this outcome on anybody. And I'm sure most people will not experience in their life a public shaming of this variety. Although it seems completely plausible that we all will. You know, if Warhol was correct about our 15 minutes of fame, then we probably all have 15 minutes of shame coming our way too. And I am not a perfect person, and I've never claimed to be. And I've certainly, when I was a youth, have been guilty of being unkind, rude, hurtful to other people. Absolutely. And to a degree, I think that all of us would do better to apologize more, but you have to mean it. And it can't just be, "I'm sorry." It has to be, "I'm sorry. It won't happen again. What, if anything, can I do to atone for it?" Again, I'm verklempt to an extent. It just seems so avoidable. I mean, especially when you think there are certainly a lot of worse people still out there walking around. A lot of worse people in comics. It would be best, and it is always best, to call out terrible behavior as it happens first by confronting the person who was terrible to you, not by immediately going public with it. Seek that apology in person, in private. But who knows? Maybe that was sought here. We don't know the background. We don't know if there's more. We don't know if it gets worse. I hope not. But in a way, you almost hope that it was worse because that would somehow explain this because it's so fucking tragic. It's okay if you were a huge fan of his work. You can still be a huge fan of that comic book work. I've had a very evolving sense of how I feel in separating the art from the artist. And certainly at this point, he is not going to benefit from the sale of any of the work he has created or is yet to be published. So, from a conscientious point of view, there's no longer, unfortunately, a situation whereby he would benefit from your enjoyment of the work, even if you, for whatever reason, felt like you didn't want to support him as an artist, as a creator. So there is now forever a separation of that work. And in that aspect, I think Ed has given a legacy to the work that it might not otherwise have. It's just terrible to think of, really, honestly. Um, I also think that to a point that he may have also made it more difficult for other people to come forward because we don't like to defame the dead. What I'm doing here right now is going to be seen by a certain group of people as a pylon, as a defamation, and it is not. It's an attempt at understanding. Desperation, which seems to be an aspect of the creative personality. It shouldn't be. There's no reason why it should be. It just seems to be. I've been an art gallerist for decades, and I've known people who are musicians, who are actors, who are filmmakers, and I've known people who are plumbers and veterinarians and doctors. And it just seems to me that people who are in a creative space experience a greater degree of doubt. And I think that may be because artists are less supported emotionally, spiritually, that it's almost seen as a failure in many instances, in many cultures, in many families to choose a creative path rather than a career path, a more mapped out future. And that can fill all of us with doubt, insecurity, and to a degree, shame. Shame for not being what may have been expected. And I am by no means a proponent of cancel culture. I am a zealot of self accountability, and I despise gaslighting. And I've seen a lot of that as people have discussed this terrible, terrible outcome. It seems obvious that, you know, speculation is par for the course, especially since we no longer have the option of arraignment. We, as a society, have an appetite for sensationalism. I mean, these are issues that deserve further study. And I think any opportunity to address how damaging that is, apparently at any age, is a worthwhile discussion. And it's awful that this is what maybe causes that discussion. But I think it's also possible to say, yes, the pylon is terrible, but also hold people accountable. I'm certainly not here to lecture anybody. And I'm certainly have no, again, nothing but compassion for everybody involved here. But I think it's important to recognize that there are levels to victimhood and there are levels to understanding that are important in leading to forgiveness and grace. And the virtue signaling, as people use this as, I mean, I've seen people talk about how they feel this is bullying, and then they go on to bully people in the same goddamn video. And it's just gross. You know, at the end of the day, I hope this gives all of us pause before we just become keyboard warriors and say crazy shit. But that doesn't mean you have to tolerate terrible statements or terrible behavior online, or you don't have to let bullshit pass as the truth. And in this case, we never really even got to the beginning of where the accusation even became a cancelable thing, I don't think. It's just so weird to me. It's unfathomable, and I am verklempt. I sincerely hope, this doesn't prevent anybody from coming forward if they have something to come forward about. I also hope this doesn't engineer a further pile on from people who are completely uninvolved in it. It's very easy to judge from afar. It's very easy to judge through a screen. It's too easy to have an opinion about everything. I hope if you, anybody you know, has been in a situation where they're experiencing, I mean, whether it's earned backlash or targeted shaming, that they have access to someone who they can vent to, and that integrity will win out. And I guess that's really most of what I had to say. And again, man, I'm busted up over this. And not because I was a huge Ed Piskor fan, but because it's I can't make sense of it. I can't make sense of it. And I'm sure most people can't. And I hope that encourages us to want things to make more sense. Well, thanks for listening. If you did, um, I have not been looking at the live comments. I will look at them later. I will respond to them later. Again, any any reason to second guess the maliciousness of anonymous commenting and pylon is good, but understand that when there is a real damage being done, that also needs to be addressed. We don't know here yet. We don't know what the situation was here yet. And that's the most painful aspect of this. And we will learn. I'm sure we will learn. And we may learn more than we want to know, regardless of where you are on this. But wherever you are, however you feel, I hope nothing is so insurmountable that you reach this level of desperation. But I also understand that there are insurmountable things. I hope everybody has a person that they can talk to openly without judgment. I know a lot of people don't. In the description of this video below, I've got some links, numbers you can call if you are in an area of desperation, if you have nobody else to talk to, and even if you do, sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody you don't know. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is ostensibly about goddamn comic books. Stuff that's supposed to make you feel good, it's supposed to inspire you. Superheroes. So, hey, if I have final instruction, go find something to be inspired by and feel good about something. Do something for yourself. Do something that makes you feel good, but do something for somebody else that makes them feel good. It's really easy to make somebody else's day a compliment, a smile. It goes a long way. Anyways, I'm Matt Kennedy. This is the Pop Sequentialism channel. Um, have a better day. Have a better week. This is. It's been rough.